Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Show. Here's what's coming up. Tartan Tactics, what next for Scotland and Steve Clarke? Caley Thistle, on the brink. And happy hearts in Minsk, but a clattering for Celtic and Rangers in Europe. Hello, I'm Andrew Slaven, your pod pal, here to ask some of my pals about what the Willie Millers is going on in Scottish football. Joining me for a rattle through this podcast this week, the Paisley punter from Down Under, the Aussie David Gray, creative director at Melbourne City FC, Findlay Marks. Thought you'd like that.
It's really good. I always get confused immediately. Do you mean the current Hibs manager, or do you mean the writer of the incredible ballad Babylon from back in the day?
Well, I think anyone who's listening to this knows the answer, and knows your beautiful dulcet tones. Babylon. And fresh off the market, by the way, after her engagement bombshell last week, TNT Sports senior producer Laura Brannan. How are you, pal?
Oh, I don't have any more exciting news this week.
We didn't expect any. We never expected any last week. You never have exciting news.
No, I know. I'm quite boring actually, my intros. I've got nothing. I was at Ibrox this week. That's a bit more interesting.
That is exciting.
Back to good old Bonnie Scotland to cover Scottish football. So it's been an exciting week.
Did you fly first class or did you get the train?
I got the train. I got the train up.
They got you on a train?
And I got a flight down.
Tight TNT, right? Getting a train 5 hours up the road. Not getting a flight out of London City.
Do you know how much equipment we have to take with us?
Oh, maybe that could be our industry question, telling people what a carny is.
Oh, wow. God.
Telly can be really, really boring sometimes.
We'll save that one for next week. You do not want to hear that one.
Right, so Finn, how are you getting on down under, mate?
Yeah, fine, thanks. It's we're getting ever closer to the start of the A-League season. I am in the motor this week. Circumstances have dictated that I'm in the motor. If you're watching on YouTube, enjoy.
It's been chucked out.
Yeah, but nothing much new to report. We're just we're still in the middle of pre-season, building up to the start of the A-League campaign. Yeah, but ready to enjoy another international break. That's for sure.
Well, this lets us just kind of segue very easily into our kind of industry segment that we've added this season, where people of the public have been getting in touch with some of their questions to us because we all work in the sport industry. And we've got one today. It asks, I say today, it was like the other day. It asks us about, and it's me, I'm not involved in this because I've never worked for club media, but with it being international break, does club media change? Does it get less busy when it's an international break? Laura, you've got experience of this. Finn, you have experience of it now. Are you quieter now? Do you get to just have catch up on days in lieu or whatever like that?
Nope. That's not how it works.
Does it get worse?
It doesn't really affect, international breaks don't affect our work or not, because there's always stuff to be doing at a club anyway. But it does change other things for the club. One example of where the international break did mess us around recently was so before the season starts, every club in the A-League has to do a media day. So they will send Getty images, and the broadcasters will come down to take headshots of the players and do all that stuff. But they just so happened to do it for our club whilst players were away in international breaks. I think we had 3 players that were all away, either with the full men's team or what we call the Oileroos, the under-23s, which is just annoying because you then have to, at your own cost, get those exact same images and intros and player walk-ins and all that kind of stuff yourself. So I think we ended up doing that on our women's media day, which was about 2 weeks later because our women's season starts later than the men's does. So small things like that can be kind of annoying. There's also, it can just affect on a playing side. Obviously, being an international in Australia is different to being, say, a European-based international player because the flights don't tend to be so demanding. But say, for example, even a flight to Australia had a match in the last international break away in Indonesia, but that's still like a 7-hour flight to get there, a 6-hour flight. So, and that's the shortest possible journey you can do apart from when you're playing New Zealand. So, it's it kind of messes things up for a playing squad that way.
It's annoying. Like, surely you could just stick out some like best of the rest, top 10 goals of the year, all that
Yes, Andrew.
rubbish.
And when does that get edited? I tell you what,
That's okay. That's interesting then.
because this is the problem, right? It is great at clubs because it does give you a relatively quieter period, so to speak, because you don't have a game at the weekend to build up to. So it is quieter in that sense. But you have to still be putting out content through that week, that 10 days. And a lot of the time, players aren't around to make it, but also it's a time for the staff to also try and take some time off as well because it is quieter. So no one's around to actually make it as well. So you've got to keep putting out content, but you've got to plan in advance, stock up on content, and that means that the weeks before it are actually even more busier than normal.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense.
So it all evens itself out. Yes, you're doing the same amount of work, but it's all crammed into a couple of weeks behind, like ahead of schedule. So it's not really peaceful for when you're at a club because of that.
Do you have to do more like promotion as well, sort of thing? Like if it's international break and there's lots of like club fans, I'm just trying to imagine like being like a like Red TV subscriber for like Aberdeen or whatever like that to be like next week when it's international break we're going to put out the best of this stuff. So you should like try and to try and bring people back to the channel sort of thing.
I mean, it depends on if you've got a pay-per-view channel for a start, which is, I mean, you chose Red TV there. That is a rare thing nowadays is actually to have a pay-per-view channel. Most
Yeah.
things are just put out on social media and nothing is really kind of appointment to view these days. It's not really how our schedules work on social media now. We don't really it's not like, right, it's Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to sit down and watch EastEnders. It's just
Yeah, I
scrolling through
know.
your phone. If
Good
something
old
takes your
days, eh?
fancy, that's how you watch it. It's kind of like in the summer as well. People always think when you're at a club, you get the whole of summer off, and you absolutely don't. It's a total myth because it's actually one of the busiest times of the year. You have to reset everything. You're changing all your assets and your like branding for the new season.
Yep.
You've got kit launches, you've got squad announcements as well because the transfer window's open. There's so much turnaround and changes in the summer. You absolutely don't get any time off at all. So you don't really get any breaks in club football.
Yeah.
It's better for me now that I work for a broadcaster, not a club, because our schedule just sort of stays the same across the board because we're covering many sports at TNT. So yes, it is international football for football, international break for football. So it's quieter on that front, but it's just going to be something busy on the other front, whether it's rugby or boxing or UFC. So we're quite into a settled routine, and it makes it easier to actually get like time off because no one really thinks, oh, that's a busy or that's a quiet time. It's just you pick your time off.
Yeah, interesting. Do you do certain things like where so like at TNT, and I know like it's what almost a year now, Laura?
Over a year now.
Over a year now. So like are there certain moments like in January, February time? Because January's technically a quiet time too. When you start planning for next season normally about that point, don't you?
God,
So it's
you
like
start. You'd love to think we're that organized. I don't think anyone in any company is that organized. But I think
senior
it's really
leadership
different.
level they do. Senior leadership level they start thinking about what's the programming for next season. Like
Oh,
that's the
that side of
type of thing.
things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
It was a little bit
mad,
different
like
for
different
me.
level.
A little bit different for me this year at TNT because we had the Olympics in the summer. So
Mm.
much of that took over the whole summer approach, which
Because
then
it's part
also,
of Discovery, Warner Brothers,
yeah. So
bigger
the
machine.
Eurosport coverage is all part of the TNT stuff. It all merges together. But it was also, we're talking about time off over the international break. That actually made it harder for me to get time off for the Euros because it's normally just a given. It's like, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of quieter. It's fine. We can deal with it. Oh, we've got the Olympics coming up in a couple of weeks. Oh, you're not getting time off. So I got a little bit lucky there because
Mm.
Scotland qualified before England and I managed to get my holidays in there early.
Excellent. Well, at least we know, Laura, you'll be batting for Scottish football rights to be on TNT over there in the big ivory towers.
Regrets? No, it's a good laugh on it. So
I didn't find it funny.
Let's move on to some Scottish football because we want some football funnies. So who can kick me off and make me laugh this week?
Craig Levein's got a nipple piercing. That's all I have to say on that matter.
Have you ever blown a funny fuse where it's so funny you just can't laugh? It's just
utterly ridiculous.
It just brings up images that I don't want to have in my mind.
This came from the Warm Up podcast, and he talks about how it was during his Leicester days. So what was that, 15, 20 years ago or something?
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
I don't know if this is something to do with the talk of Gareth Ainsworth getting a Hearts job and being a bit edgy. You know, he's a rocker, he's a front man, he's in a band, and suddenly Craig Levein's went, oh, hold on a minute, my precious Hearts. I want to go back to my precious Hearts. I'm cool, I'm hip. I used to be in a rock band. I had a nipple piercing.
You got a piercing, Finn?
I used to have my ear pierced, but that's because when you don't have any hair, and before I had my beard, there's only so many ways you can accessorize. So that was the way I did that. But no, I've not got any other piercings or tattoos or body mods at all. The mental image that I couldn't get out of my mind is like, what does Craig Levein say when he turns up to get his nipple pierced? Does he just walk in and be like, hi, I'm here for a nipple piercing? And then he just sits down, and then you're like, so why are you thinking of getting this? And he's just like, oh, it's a good laugh in it. Regrets? No, it's a good laugh in it. But then it's like you start going further and you're like, oh, does Craig Levein, is there a whole undercurrent to Craig Levein that we don't know? Is he on like, some red-eye flight to Berlin at the weekend trying to get into Bergheim and, all that kind of stuff? Is he in S&M? I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, don't.
No. We never need that image.
Levein in leather.
But this is the guy who refused to play a striker for Scotland. This is the guy that went with no strikers away to Czech Republic, the 10-0 formation.
He's not the rebel.
Yeah. Do you know what made me laugh? Like who was it that Arsenal were playing recently? And Arteta went for like a 6-5-0 like formation, and everyone was like, "Oh, I'm loving it. This is cool." And I'm like, Levein invented that. That was Scottish football from start to finish. You can't just take that off of us. We started that.
I think
was Levein.
Was that not the claim though, that because this was, when would that have been? Levein was in charge, but then Spain basically went on and won the World Cup without playing a striker.
World Cup and the Euros.
And the Euros, yeah.
That's true. That's true. But they still had someone up front in the formation.
Did they copy us? I thought we copied them.
I mean, they're forever copying us after we scudded them in the qualifying, and then they went on and won it. So just by following the way that we play.
Let's just say they copied us. It sounds better.
They follow on from our failures. What can we say? Any other funnies? What's going on? I'll tell you one. Do you like pizza?
I like the pizza. Do you like pizza?
Yeah. So Scott McTominay and Billy Gilmore recently went to Napoli in the summer. More so because of Scott McTominay doing so well in recent times. There's now a restaurant in Glasgow that have named a pizza in the honour of Scott McTominay and Billy Gilmore. And it's got, what is it? Is that like a haggis meatball thing going on? It's a restaurant called Bella Vita, it's called. And he's from Napoli, big Napoli fan. And by the way, like McTominay scored within like 24 seconds of his like Serie A debut the other weekend or something like that. Was it not last weekend actually? For like 24 seconds, like absolutely nuts. And Man United fans are just throwing their toys at the pram, which is even funnier. But let me just get you the recipe. Obviously, bread, tomatoes, cheese.
I mean, just tell us the toppings. We don't need the whole recipe.
Haggis meatballs, mascarpone, and whiskey sauce. Which actually
that sounds good.
Could work actually. Yeah. A whiskey sauce on a pizza could totally work.
It's super interesting.
Kieran Tierney, he timed that perfectly. Now, can he pick out the killer pass? There's McTominay! Oh, what a hit from Scott McTominay!
Right, okay. Let's talk about the Scotland squad announcement, because nothing makes you hungry than a Scotland squad announcement if you're Laura Brannan. So, Laura, you have the floor. Like, what's going on? Like, we've heard Scott McTominay, beautiful midfielder that you think should play up front.
Did I ever actually say that out loud?
Yes, you did. Or
I
if
know
you
we
did
d-
not, I think you did. We
I know we
definitely
talked
argued about
about
it
it.
at length.
We talked about it at least in the group chat, but I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast that was
Maybe
my
not.
secret weapon for the Euros, and I still stand by it now. If we are struggling in the last 10 minutes of a game, put McTominay up front. If we'd done that against Hungary, we would have been in the knockout rounds.
I think you also said you'd die on that hill. That small hill.
I am still dying on that hill.
Tiny hill. Okay, cool.
And Napoli fans will join me there.
Yeah, they might actually, to be fair. But there's some changes though from the original announcement, right?
Yes, there is. Well, they've not been confirmed yet. They might have been confirmed by the time this podcast gets released, but there's a few changes in the works. They probably will already been made official by the time this gets released. But Robbie McCrory is going to be coming in to replace Angus Gunn, who got injured at the weekend. He went off at half-time with a rib injury. And
Oh,
Jack
I love ribs.
Jack McKenzie's also coming in to replace Greg Taylor because Celtic players can't play in Scotland squad anymore. I'm joking. He went off the calf injury against Dortmund during the week.
Are there any more details about Angus Gunn's rib injury? Was because I heard a rumor that there was a kind of blonde-haired woman that ran onto the pitch and punched him in the side. Is there any truth to those rumors? No.
I can neither confirm nor deny that allegation.
Speaking of Jack McKenzie's, just something that I'd seen doing the rounds on Twitter, but have we seen his little Zidane back heel pass midair from their game at the weekend? Oh, unbelievable. So for those that haven't seen it, it's just sensational. Mitrov plays like a crossfield pass. It's going out to the wing, and where most Scottish-based players would try and head it, I think, back into play. What Jack McKenzie does is he basically spins away from it, kicks it at head's height with the back of his left heel, and it immediately springs Aberdeen forward into a counter-attack. It's just tail-in ball is magnificent to watch, and fair play to Jack McKenzie being on the edge of getting into the Scotland team, because that's the kind of showboating I think we need at international level, quite frankly.
Oh yeah.
I'm quite interested as well to see how Liam Lindsay gets on. I feel like this is a name that has been passed around for a long time now and never really taken too seriously. Even back to when he was at Partick Thistle days, he was always kind of tipped as, a real prospect here. He went.
Always helps when you have a name that alliterates as well. Big fan.
He went down south maybe about 6 years ago or something. He's been at Preston for a few years now. I'll hold my hands up. I've not watched Preston play, so I don't know how he's been getting on.
Paul Heckenbottom's Preston. Hibs fans, be aware.
We are crying out for defenders, so to have a good centre back there, more than happy to see him in the squad and see how he gets on.
Interestingly, with Liam Lindsay, do you know he went to school with Andy Robertson?
I didn't know that.
He went to the same high school. I can't remember where it was or what it's called, sorry, but Giffnock High School somewhere in Giffnock. But they played in the same senior team as well.
Nice.
Seamless transition then when he comes back in.
Right, let's move on. John Bleasdale, our good friend, caught up with a Croatian journalist, a guy called Tomislav Gabelic, who works for a newspaper 24 Sata, ahead of the game to get the lowdown on how they're feeling after a similarly poor Euros.
After the Euro, which was not for the general population, result is not okay. I mean, when you have from the three previous competition, you return with a medal. Of course, there is a disappointment to play Euro like this one. But also, I can say that it is like more or less expected, because problem with Croatian national team is that we are a small country, as well as Scotland. So there is not enough great players. We have a bunch of good players, few excellent ones, but there is a team of 7, 8, 10, 12, maybe 15 players, but not more. So from time to time, you have competitions that you are not ready, or some guys may be injured or out of the form, out of the shape. So for me, it is like expected to every 5 or 10 years you fail to qualify to the big tournament, or don't pass the group, or something like that.
So there you go. Disappointing not to come out with a medal. We feel you, Tom. We felt the same way. I don't know what your mood is going into these next games. So we play Croatia on Saturday in Croatia. And then we're back at Hampden to play Portugal on Tuesday night. But I mean, I always go to you, Laura, because you feel it more than any of us combined. Like, we love Scotland, but this is your team. You don't have a club team. Scotland's your team. So, like, what's your mood going into these next two games?
Slightly scared.
Would you have been scared if these were the first two matches off the back of the Euros?
No, it's kind of got to the stage now where it doesn't even matter who the opposition is. We are so unpredictable, or rather, we are predictably awful, regardless of who the opposition is. So when we played Northern Ireland back in March, it was probably the worst game of football I've ever seen in my life. And we've gone on to then play some huge teams and equally being just as bad. We're not really varying right now, so it's quite scary going into this one, because I don't want Craig Levein to go, and I think I'm in the minority there, but I still want him to stay in charge. But even I feel like I'm pushed to the point now, if we don't do anything in these two games, he is very much in a Shirley peg, because we can't go this long without doing anything. We're not making any impact right now at all, and it's getting just a little bit tiresome, to say the least.
Do you want to do that again and say Steve Clarke instead of Craig Levein?
It's the nipple ring. It's just hanging there in our mind. Can't get rid of it. Desperate for Craig and his nipple ring to come back to the Scotland team so we can play with our strikers.
That's so good.
So broken.
Do you think Steve Clarke's got a nipple ring? Or any piercings? I bet you Steve Clarke is like me, pure clean, no tattoos, boring as fuck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Oh, dear.
Finn, I won't lie, like, I'm totally feeling back to miserable Slavo. I don't think we're going to get anything out of these two games. And I think you're a bit of a realist like me too. And Laura's the one who's always the optimistic one. But off the back of just listening to what I've heard, are we fucked?
Well, I'm still stuck in 2010, so what am I to talk?
I think it depends how we set up. I think I'd mentioned this before. We actually have a relatively good competitive record against Croatia, even away in Croatia.
Yeah.
And I think they're a national team that are in a bit of transition as well at the moment. There's a whole generation of incredible talents that are all moving on and retiring at kind of the same time. They still have very talented players coming in to replace them, but sometimes it just takes a bit of time to bed in that kind of like fresh influx. I think it weirdly, if it was the other way around, I think if we were playing Croatia at home, I would maybe fancy us a wee bit more to get something out of it. I do struggle to see how we're going to get anything away. And Portugal coming at home, I still don't think Portugal are as good as people make out. I think they're slightly overpraised in the media. That said, of course, they're a team that is just littered with a litany of stars. I don't think we've beaten Portugal competitively since 1980. So bit of time's passed since then. And I think the last time we played them, other than obviously when we played them there was a friendly in 2018, a couple of friendlies since then. But the last time we played them in a competitive match was April 1993, and it's when Ali McCoy broke his leg. And I remember being 7 years old, and totally heartbreaking. So I've kind of had it in for Portugal ever since. And yeah, I hope we pump them, but I don't know if that will happen. I would always fancy us slightly more at home, I think, than away. So you never know. I think we were lucky not to get pumped while we were over there. It was only Angus Gunn who both simultaneously saved us and caused some of the goals to go in.
That should have been a draw. I'm still standing by that.
When was the last time we won a home game? Because we haven't won one in the last 2 years.
No, because our last 2 victories came against Gibraltar and Cyprus. Before that, we beat Georgia at home, and that was the reigning game, which was last summer. So a year past in June was our last home victory.
Is that right?
I always feel, but the thing is with international games is that because it's so infrequent, the matches, you can get these stats like, oh, Scotland haven't won at home in over a year. You're like, yeah, but they've only played 7 matches since then or whatever, and how many of them at home?
I know, but at the same time, like every Scotland fan looks forward to these occasions, especially when it's at home. So, like, surely the players look like, is there a level of like, because there aren't so many games there, that there's even more pressure to perform? Because I would argue it should be the other way. It's like it's even more of an opportunity to perform rather than pressure being added to it. But I just think I kind of feel like the Croatia one, like whatever happens, happens. But I just really want to beat Portugal. I really want us to just beat
Ronaldo
Portugal
cry.
And well, not
Ronaldo
just make
tears,
him
please.
cry, but Bruno Fernandes as well.
Yes, please.
You know what I mean? Just
Tears
win our
everywhere.
just win our home games so that it sends a message to everywhere else that you're going to come to Scotland and you are going to be in severe trouble. Like just make Hampden a fortress again.
I weirdly do think, and this is something that's been historical and across a number of squads and managers, Scotland, I think, see, when they're the underdog, when they're playing a team that they know is probably better than them, I think we actually tend to play okay. Even in like the Bertie votes here and stuff like that, I can still remember results like drawing with Germany or Italy or there's been results over the years where you're like, it's okay against those teams. I tend to find we struggle more when we're expected to win. And that's actually been one of the nice things about the Clarke reign, is that the teams were expected to win. We have beaten broadly, but still that mentality can come back. So games like, the playoff against Ukraine, really, we had everything at our disposal there to get through that game, and we didn't, because mentally I just don't think we turned up. But I do wonder if the pressure's slightly off, and it will be against teams like Croatia and Portugal, that maybe we weirdly can play with a bit more freedom and give a better account of ourselves, like we did against Spain in the qualifiers.
I think you've just answered a question that's been living in my mind for a long time, is that we don't handle pressure. No. We don't handle it at all. We can't perform yet when that level of expectation is on our shoulders. We just can't do it. We've never done it. Not in my lifetime. We've never done it. Okay, we've managed to get to major competitions, but when we arrive ready for kickoff and the expectations like, oh, do you know what? I think we could maybe like 1-0, 2-0, or maybe a draw, and we end up losing 3-0 or whatever like that. That's what tends to happen. Like when we get our chips up and we're ready to go, that's when the tower falls down. And I'm sick of it, man. Because we've had in the Clarke years, when it all first started to kind of go our way, we were always thinking like, well, these were the games that we would lose, or these were the games that would lose a last minute like equaliser or whatever like that. And we were just enjoying the fact that we were getting the luck on our side, because we never had Lady Luck. And finally she was like, giving us some of that. I'm just fearful that under Clarke, who's a very good manager, we're slowing down, and that momentum is starting to dissipate that what we had before, because we've had too many bruisings now. And that I don't want us to get into, for Clarke's sake as well, I don't want us to get into that sort of malaise of just thinking like, oh, well, here we go again. And we're trying to like force the change, because Steve Clarke has been a wonderful manager for Scotland. He has changed our whole hearts and minds about the squad, about each individual player that we've all fallen in love with. He's created memories for the likes of Craig Marshall and, superstar Stephen O'Donnell, taking these guys who were, not nobodies, but like they were footballers that weren't expected to be playing for the Scotland national team again. He brought them back, and he brought Scotland back. I don't want us to be in the next couple of months falling into oh, we need a change. Oh, he's stuck in his ways, because that just ruins the memory of what he's built. And I just want to believe again. I really, really do want to believe again. So
Can you go in and do that speech, Andrew, to the dressing room on Saturday or on Tuesday when they come back home to play? Can you just go in and say all that to them?
That's the thing. Like, do it for Craig Marshall. Do it for Considine that came in and did the job. Because we had no one else that could do the job. Get them in to just
came in and then
you
left a
guys are
legacy.
supposed to be the best in your position for that country. So do your best. Just do all of it. Everything that you have to do. Don't do a Porteous and get sent off because you're sclaffing about, terrified that you're getting pumped. And I love Porto, by the way. Like, I think he's class, and I hope he starts. But if anything, just beat Portugal at Hampden, and there will be a whole change of behaviour towards the Scotland national team.
Yeah, shift in mentality.
Don't worry about Croatia. Don't worry about that. That'll look after itself. Just pump Portugal, guys. Come on.
We can't be having that, mate. You better get your finger out, all right, and make sure that you get the results.
We're going to go and we'll talk about something that's even more disappointing in Scottish football. Nobody likes to lose a football club, and this isn't an easy one, because they've been a great club for a good few decades now, since they ever came into Scottish football. But the warning signs, let's just be honest, have been there for Inverness, Caledonian Thistle for the last few seasons. Relegation to the Scottish Championship into the third tier has poked a few more holes into the Highlanders' purse as well. So the club said last week that they have 2 weeks to save the club. So what now for a club that were Scottish Cup runners-up just last year? Laura, Finn, you spoke to Stevie Riley from the Wyness Shuffle Podcast, and this is it now.
Stevie, thanks for joining us. Just to get started, in idiot terms, and for everyone who's not a Caley Thistle fan, what on earth is going on at the club right now?
Jeez, that's a loaded question. Where are we as a recording now? Yeah, we are facing Prospect administration. So we had a little fun summer, being the sort of brunt of a lot of jokes from Scottish football fans about Kettle McWanna and Ben Barty farms. But now we're at the stage now, guys, where we have to basically raise £200,000 within the next sort of 12 days, or it's bust time. I think we're projected to we need to make about 1.4, 1.6 million this season. So we're trying to catch up and paper over the cracks at the moment. But it's been fun and emotional the last couple of days.
This fundraiser, so it's currently sitting at about a third of the way through to your target. Is this realistic? Firstly, and what do you make of this fundraiser? Is it a kind of embarrassing way to go down a route, or is it quite it's needed, so let's just do everything possible?
No, I'm not for it. I mean, I'm up for administration. It's pretty sad people will lose jobs, but I think asking fans for money to paper over the cracks, we don't know a sugar daddy. So this crowdfunding thing that's been going on, I don't agree with it. Appreciate the fans putting their hands in their pockets, but I think this is basically a ploy from ex-board members to stop administration by trying kicking the can down the road, and I think we're just delaying inevitable. And I think the sooner we realise that as a club that we need to go into administration to save the club long term, I think that needs to happen. So I'm not a fan of it, but I applaud the fans that have dug deep and put money in so far.
Stevie, I mean, these kind of problems and the issues that are beleaguering Caley Thistle right now, they've not appeared overnight. Are you able to give us a kind of potted history timeline of how the club's gone from where it was a couple of seasons ago, maybe to this point right now, which seems quite dire?
You can go way back. I mean, the most drastic crackpot ideas that we've had is to be a concert company. During COVID, before COVID, we'd be scheduled to host a couple of gigs at the stadium, which were obviously done by a concert company. We would also get the rental. They got cancelled due to COVID, and I thought the guys at the board thought, well, we can do that. We can just be a concert company, having no experience of doing it. That was a massive failure. There's been Barty fan projects, which
are still up in the air whether that happens or not. I think for what we're a football club, we've taken the eye off the ball in terms of trying to look after your bread and butter, which is football. But it goes all the way back probably to 2015 when we won the Scottish Cup. We were third in the league, and for a club of our size, once you hit that height, you're all going down, and then it's a lot of mismanagement, bad decisions on the pitch. But I think on the pitch is nothing compared to the decisions that have been made off it that have just basically nearly killed our club so far.
You're talking about admin and wanting to go into it. What to you personally, why is that the best route? Why is that the best scenario? What would you achieve from that? How would that fix things?
Clears a lot of debt. It also goes back to a fresh start. It also makes the club a bit more viable down the line for investment. I mean, who would invest in Inverness at the moment? We've got so much money that we need to fill. I get it, people's going to lose jobs. It's going to be hard. I think hopefully some of this crowdfunding money that was put in, if we could use that towards covering staff costs, that might help. But I think long term, we need to do an administration. We don't have someone that could come in with 2 million and get us out the hole. We're not forcing ourselves a sugar daddy like the guys across the bridge at Ross County do, unfortunately. But we need to help. But I don't think we can get it, and we don't have the time. And it's a bit of a curls way probably, but I think for a sustainable sort of future of the club, I think we need to do that and go back to scratch, I think.
In terms of the future, do you see this as the club's kind of been backed into a corner, and maybe the fan base has as well because of the decision making that's been going on? It's just it's such a difficult thing looking on from the outside in, because from Caley Thistle's inception as a club, really, it was kind of like always been a club that's been clever at the way it's tried to build towards a success. And for the last 30 odd years, it's been an incredibly sustainable club, and maybe in terms of resources, actually quite a successful one, winning a Scottish Cup. And as you're saying, reaching incredible heights in the top division and all of that stuff. Was there a point, like a kind of sea change, where so much of that good stuff has changed? Was it maybe being blinded by trying to look to the next level or growing something which maybe just isn't possible for a club based geographically where Caley Thistle are?
On the pitch, obviously, I mean, we were in the Scottish Cup final a year and a half ago. It's crazy, against Celtic, and we were 45 minutes from going to the Premier League against St Johnstone the season before that. So on the pitch, he's been competitive. It just seems to be that the last year or two, the off the field stuff for the Barty firms, the concert companies, having a CEO in charge who was Scott Gardner's probably one of the worst signings Inverness ever made. I mean, that's the guy that forgot to order seats for Hearts at Tynecastle, so that gives you a sort of understanding where he was basically left to run the club into the ground with the chairman who was based down in Dundee, so he wasn't there every day. So I think it's just a lot of errors off the pitch. On the pitch, we've been really competitive. Even last season, I'm not Duncan Ferguson's biggest fan, but we should have stayed up as well. We sort of went down without a whimper, but it's off the field stuff. On the pitch, we've been spoiled as fans. We've overachieved, been to more cup finals, done more than a lot of big established teams in the Premier League have done in the last 25 years. It's just the wrong people at the top that have been in charge the last sort of 4 or 5 seasons.
And if it does go down the route of admin and everything changes in that sense, how do you see it all changing at the board level, at the very top?
Well, Alan Savage has come in. He's come in as a consultant. He was our chairman 2006, 2008 when we were a top Premier League team doing well. But Alan's come in with a business plan to try. He'll cover the costs, fill the hole, and run the club for the foreseeable. Should it be 6 months, 6 years until we get new investment? So I think we've got the right people there. The people that have left are now left. I think they've got to look at themselves in the mirror and realise what they've done to get to this situation. But I think going forward, the structure looks good. But the current board have got to approve going into administration. I know we've done some preliminary talks with, I think it's BDO they're called, I think. But we've got the right people there. They just need to be given the ball and they can hopefully run with it.
Do you kind of feel that like administration is almost like a necessary evil that the club has to go through to kind of get rid of the raw or something like that, make the drastic changes that need to happen in order for the club to come out the other side? Because I think historically, obviously, it's never a good thing when a club or any organisation or company goes into administration, but it's not necessarily the death knell. Like we've seen clubs like Livy a couple of times, Motherwell, Dundee go into administration and come out the other side. They might have been bruised coming out the other side, but they have been able to, in essence, get their clubs back and get themselves back to where they want to be. Do you kind of see administration as like this necessary evil that Caley Thistle might have to go through?
Yeah, it's always the last resort, but I don't see an alternatives. There's no one there with the money. We've tried the last couple of weeks to try and get investment in. There's a lot of people with a lot of money in the Highlands, but don't want to invest in a club that's lost a lot of money. So whether we can sort of reshape the club, and I mean, I think we've got to get reputation back. The amount of local distrust by the concert company fiasco, the small companies that owed money that never got their money back yet, then yeah, I think we need to reset and come back, and it'll take time. And I don't think we've got time to run as we are. We take the 15 points. It's not a killer at the start of this point in the season. I think we can still stay up. But yeah, so off the part, we just need to salvage our reputation, and I think administration is the only way of doing that.
Is this an unusual attitude, Stevie, or is this quite common across the board of the supporters?
I think, not speaking for everyone, but I think the majority of guys I know see it as only sort of opportunity to try and have a club to support in 6 months rather than crowdfunding, paper in the cracks. I mean, if you know someone with 1.4 or 1.6 million, then yeah, send them my way and I'll speak to Alan about it. But there's no one, and it's something. If you'd have said to me a couple of years ago, would you see a club in administration? I'd go, no, never in a hope. But it's not the nicest way to do it, but I think it's the most sensible way, and we have to realise that's what needs to happen.
Anonymous donation made for 20 grand to the GoFundMe. Is there talk of who that might have been?
I think we know, but I think it's Ryan Christie, which thanks Ryan, that's a small change from his bonus wages, I think. But yeah, I think it's him. But there's guys I know putting £1,000, there's £500. This is guys that are just, living month to month, just on a wage. So well, it's nice. I wish that they'd be using the money elsewhere. I don't think the crowdfunding would work, but hopefully it can be used maybe for staffing costs if we go down the admin role. But yeah, at least it's there for them.
How important is the stuff going on the pitch as well for this season? Like you were saying, if administration happens and it looks likely, there would be the automatic points deduction. But even with that, like you're saying, you've kind of been competitive, even though it wasn't the best of seasons last season. And it's not started great so far this season as well, second bottom of League One currently. But do you feel confident enough that the staff on the pitch will be able to keep them at a point where they can at least keep them in League One, and you can kind of recover from that maybe going forward over the next couple of seasons? Basically, like, how disastrous would it be slipping down further again into League Two?
Oh, that's unthinkable. That was the game yesterday. Duncan Ferguson's football's turgid, and that's me saying it politely. It is horseshoe football. For a guy, in my opinion, it's out of depth. I think he's maybe too big for this league. I think he's got an ego about him, but his record this season, I mean, 1 win and 9, albeit I think 6 draws in there. I think 7 draws, sorry. To that, it's crazy. Football's terrible. Fans are now on his back as well. If we lose 15 points, they're staying up, yes, but yeah, seeing it been tight. Yeah, I think on the pitch we'll get a good team. We're just not the right manager that can take us forward. The football's rotten, for want of a better phrase. So yeah, maybe administration might change that. That could be a blessing in disguise for me, but I'll keep that opinion to myself.
If we had a bad night last night, you're having a fucking horrendous one now.
So we all love 3 points, don't we? Yeah. But we seem to love to just nosh on coefficient points a little bit more in Scotland. Yes. So, Laura, how are we getting on in Europe?
It's going to be as cheery a section as the international chat. Oh,
Need some violins for this podcast.
Who had Hearts down as saving the coefficient this
Well,
last
that's
week?
good. That's a good place to start.
Yeah,
Get in,
let's
Jambos.
start with the good stuff. Hearts, annoyingly playing in front of no fans. A little bit depressing. Shades of COVID there. Obviously, because we're playing a Belarusian? Is that a word?
Belarusian.
Yeah. There you go. It's an education, this podcast. Yeah, look, pulled it back. Last minute winner. Great. It's so good. I don't know if anyone was expecting it, but well, I don't think anyone was expecting it based on Hearts' run of form recently. We talked last week about them scoring a last-minute equaliser against Ross County, and I said at that point, it sends a big message. It sends a message to the fans, the opposition, but also amongst themselves as players. And they've taken that, and they've really pushed on and taken that into a huge European game. It's an even bigger message now. So the levels of confidence this will instill in them is really, really good.
Given the fact that before this, Celtic had won in Europe, Rangers had won in Europe, so Hearts have added another win onto the coefficient table. Get in, lads. What I really enjoyed about this game, when Hearts equalised, it was an own goal. So they got to half-time, not a single shot on target. But they were still level 1-1. It was really funny. But it was a last-minute winner.
Well, what I was doing at the time, we've got what we call the green room, for where the presenters and the pundits go before it's not technically called the green room, I'm just calling that.
Yes, it is.
Where the pundits and the presenters go when they're not on air. I was at Ibrox and we were following around Ali McCoist for the night. And I was in this room watching the game, and it was,
as you do,
he was there, and Matt Smith was there. At this point, the other reporters, like Derek McInnes, was on air for the Hearts game themselves. But the two of them were in this van watching the end of the game and managed to capture the moment when the ball went in and Ali did jump up. I can confirm Ali did jump up, and he was celebrating Hearts scoring their winner. It was quite a peaceful moment.
That's the thing, though. Like, maybe there will be Scottish football fans out there that just hate other Scottish teams doing really, really well.
Oh, really? Never noticed that before, Andrew.
Maybe between two certain clubs. But we're here for the masses, Findlay. So why don't I just come to you and you can tell us about Rangers, what would we say?
Humping, throttling, shellacking.
Lying down to Leon. No, they didn't lie down. Rangers were actually in the game. It just disappeared from them.
It was such a bizarre game, and it's just so disheartening when like your two biggest, richest teams are just give such a tragic account of themselves on an international, on a worldwide stage, in one of the most viewed competitions in the world. The Rangers game in particular was really peculiar because, and I think this is something that Clement alluded to after the game, right? Rangers could feasibly and easily should have been 2-0 up quite early on in that game. Like the opening 10-15 minutes, I think even the Levein manager said this in the post-match. She was like, we didn't know what was going on. It was a whirlwind in the first 10-15 minutes. But Rangers, again, this is the story of their season and it has been for a while, are so profligate in front of goal. You can't be at this level and not take your chances and then concurrently after that make these ridiculous mistakes. So poor Connor Barron, who's been excellent, I think, so far this season, had a really poor night. These things will happen. It's a jump up in level again. He played like a blind pass. I think that was for the second Leon goal. But yeah, Rangers, Vaclav Cherny missed an open goal, essentially. It's the dreadful miss.
That was awful, man.
And Tavernier had a really easy chance as well. If it's 2-0 to Rangers in the opening 10 minutes, it's a totally different game, and I don't think they go on and lose. But then, Leon have got World Cup winners and stuff. They were just so ruthless in front of goal. It's disappointing because I think Rangers broadly, again, like they've been a bit odd to say the least over the last 2 years, even in Europe where they have been quite good for the last 5 or 6 seasons. I think it's something like Rangers' fourth defeat at home in Europe, I think, in the last 7 years, which is an incredible record. And in this competition, so UEFA Cup or Europa League, whatever it is, I think Rangers first entered it in the 80s. They've only lost, I think, 8 games in total in this competition at home. And half of those are to French teams. So it's just weird you get these little anomalies that are in there. Rangers have got an amazing record against Portuguese, and I think Belgian teams really dreadful against French teams. But yeah, I think it was slightly different to the Celtic game in that I was just, especially given that this is Brendan Rodgers' second spell, and obviously Brendan Rodgers has been in charge of Celtic teams at this level in this competition and seen similar results happen literally in the past. The naivety of them to go into a game like that where they were setting up, they smashed St Johnstone the weekend before the Dortmund game. but they were literally setting up the same way against Borussia Dortmund that they were against St Johnstone. And to me, that's absolute madness. You cannot do that. It more than anything else, it kind of just shows a lack of respect, I think, for the opposition as well, because Dortmund would have just been lapping that up. And they did. They did. They were immensely clinical. And you do get these games, I think, not just Rangers and Celtic, but you do get these games where the elite level teams just have an on night and everything they seem to be doing seems to be coming off: passes, goals, shots at goals. But at the same time, you cannot, to me, go in like that. And I think what was actually almost a bit troubling was listening to the post-match where Rodgers was asked the question quite rightly, would you have done anything differently knowing how you're going? He's like, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, but this is showing you are not learning from these experiences, these chastening experiences, which is just, I mean, it's disappointing for the fans that have travelled out there. It's such an amazing stadium. And all it does to me as well, and all club rivalries aside and stuff like this, when Rangers and Celtic and our other teams, like we've had a litany of other Scottish teams that have had embarrassing results in recent years, all it does is pour petrol on the fire of, yeah, it's a farmers league. You don't know how to play at this level internationally. And it's just that wider question of why are we so off it when we're playing teams outside of our own league that we just cannot cope.
So I was working on the goal show for TNT Sports, and let's just say I'm watching 9 football matches at the same time, but I've got like a keen eye on the Celtic game, Celtic Dortmund game, and I could not believe the space between midfield and defence, like just how forward thinking Celtic were, which is, some people would say admirable, some people say naivety. I just think it was absolute madness. Like, they were completely lost in that game. Completely lost. Because you could see Dortmund were just, not just clinical, they were so clever. They could see how naive Celtic were on the pitch. But for me, all I could see was Brendan Rodgers' ego on that pitch. That was all ego. That wasn't naivety. That was,
Absolutely.
We have got the squad to perform, and I'm going to go out there and we're going to play the Celtic way. We're going to do it the way that we should do it. And that's fine. However, when the fire is in your face and you're just going to go, I'll just put a cloth on it. There was no like huge change.
Yeah.
That should worry a lot of Celtic fans. I think it should, because like, it's fine to play the Celtic way. It's fine to just be like all out attack and play the way you want to play. That's admirable. That's fine. However, you're going to get absolute hidings in Europe when you play the big teams. The build up to that match, everyone was saying, and I'd seen Dortmund were rubbish against Bruges, but still managed to claw out a 3-0 victory. They were terrible at the weekend. Archie Ryan-Tutt, the reporter for ESPN and for TNT, was texting me saying he saw a clip of Dazen Maeda like running back at like the 89th minute, like just that energy and high level intensity. Like, he was saying, if Celtic can keep that level of intensity, they've got a really good chance against Celtic. Everyone believed it. Everybody. But then it all goes wrong, and it goes wrong badly and quickly. But there's no change. Ange Postecoglou was the same at Celtic. He wanted to play one way, and that's it. The thing is, just be prepared. Like, if you're going to be like, oh, well, we lost and that's okay, that's fine. But Celtic fans have to be prepared for Brendan Rodgers to come out and say exactly the same thing every single time. And then maybe is that the argument to turn around and say, like, we need more money?
It's not one of these things of just throwing money at a problem or doing something, or we just need players for a next level.
Oh, it totally is.
You see teams with a no, because you can see teams with a fraction of the price being able to be set up well and compete and doing stuff. Like, look at Rangers' run to the Europa League final a couple of years ago. Every team they played, they had fewer resources than those teams, and they still managed to get through. It's a question of pragmatism, I think. And it was really interesting because a point you made there about the way that Rodgers approached the game was something that Tom English called out on the BBC coverage after the game. And I would encourage people to go and listen to that, the kind of post-match fallout from the Dortmund game where Tom English did this, because I thought everything he said was completely spot on. And this wasn't just stuff having to go at Celtic. It was a broader picture. It's stuff that's historical for Scottish clubs. But the thing he said about Rodgers was there is a fine line between self-confidence, which Celtic should have, they're unbeaten at the start of the season, and naivety. which is being completely underprepared for going in at this level and not learning the lessons that have gone on before. But I mean, this is something that it would be good to have a almost like a full episode of trying to pick through the traits of like, why do Scottish teams not do this? But I keep coming back to something that there's actually Graham Souness said from his time as being Rangers manager in the mid-80s, where he said, I got to a point where I realised I couldn't have a team in Scotland that could play both well domestically and compete at a European level. I had to make a team for one or the other, because we could be, a bit slower in the build-up, a bit more graceful, and we could compete in Europe, but that wouldn't win in the hurly-burly of Scottish football. Now, I know the Scottish game's progressed a lot since the 80s, and that still it's maybe closer aligned now than the gulf was between the top end of Europe in the 80s and or certainly the late 80s and where the domestic game was. But I think the point is still true. Like, we see Celtic cuffing teams in second gear most weeks as well, because of the financial advantage and other things that they've got, the support base and everything else. But they still are not able to turn that into competing on a bigger stage when they really should be, or we should have figured out how to do this by now. And I wonder if part of it is just like our game, our product in Scotland is still so different. The way that the referees operate domestically is so different to on the continent. They give free kicks differently and doing all this thing. Unless you kind of are able to not lose your identity, but you're able to be smart to how you compete in these games, I think this will be the cycle going forward for a long, long time.
And it's only going to get harder as well, because Celtic are up against Atalanta away. I mean, the Europa League winners in the next round of games. Andrew, you touched on it exactly what I was going to say. It was all arrogance and ego that was coming out of that. The way that Celtic and Rangers should be approaching these games is the way that the likes of Ross County approached Celtic at the weekend. They have to go in with that attitude as the underdogs and take their chances. I just don't understand how that's so obvious to everyone else, but to Brendan Rodgers, he just wants to play this one way. I don't think it's all just the money argument, to be fair.
Well, what's funny though is that Brendan Rodgers will come out and say, "Oh, it was pretty good football for a team that doesn't play football," or it was. I'll listen to people who have managed football clubs, and I'll listen to football coaches. I won't listen to anybody else, which is absolutely fine, and that makes total sense. You have been scudded 7-1 off of Dortmund. You've been pumped off of Paris Saint-Germain. You've been battered by Barcelona, like all these big teams. And everyone gets, pummeled by all these teams. That's fine. I don't want the Neil Lennon Celtic team, like, playing the best Barcelona team that there has ever been and still managing a 2-1 win by being pragmatic and hitting on the break. And like that time, what did Celtic have, a ball possession of like 11% or something like that? Like, so funny. Like,
because it wasn't arrogant and it wasn't down to someone's ego.
But people only remember the fact that Celtic beat the best Barcelona team there has ever been. But let's just hope we can all be a bit more like Hearts. That's it. Let's hope Scotland do well against Croatia, but more importantly, pump Portugal, because that'll be funny. Ronnie Tears, please. Laura, thanks for your time. Finn, thanks for your time.
Nice.
Cheers from Stevie from the Wyness Shuffle Podcast. Thanks to John Bleasdale for speaking with Tomislav Gabalic. If you want to see the full thing of that, go to the SFFF podcast, Scottish Football Forums, that is, podcast, to see the full thing. We're over now. We're finished. Stop listening. Go away. Do something really, really important. Goodbye.